Okay, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy ChEDDErTarY here, and I want to talk about games that I would like to see a full-on reboot, remaster, and remake. And we're talking about games from the PS2 era, PS1, and the 360. Now, some companies, not all of them, some, have been taking a lot of their much more older classic games and have been, for the most part, really remastering them, remaking them for a little bit. And it's not so many of the companies. Like, I know you had a lot of the Resident Evil games from the PS1, PS2, and I think a bit from the 360 era that they decided to remaster a little bit, remake it, and then put it out on the PS4. Now, not too many companies do that, and some of the games that I'm about to name, some of the companies are still around, but a lot of the companies that made most of the games that I'm about to make are no longer around, which means the ownerships and the rights for that game are still floating around, which means they are up for grabs. So let's start off with the PS1 era. Now, PS1 era, okay. I didn't play a lot of games back then with the PS1 era. If I were to pick, it would be the ones that I rented a lot, and then ended up owning them a little bit afterwards. So I want to start off with, let's start off with Dexter's Laboratory. Dexter's Laboratory game for the PS1 was a good game. I feel like they could really go back, remake that, reboot it, remaster it for today's console, for today's era, because it was really a nice, fundamental game for everybody to play and to enjoy. I played it a lot. I enjoyed it. But I feel like they should really bring that game back. I would say the next game would be Toy Story 2. I would love to see Toy Story 2 come back as a remake and a remaster, as well as remaking Toy Story 1. Now, I have Toy Story 1 because that came out during the year of Sega, the Sega Genesis with the cartridges. So, Toy Story 1 and 2, I would like to see remade, rebooted, definitely remaster and release for this newer generation and newer consoles. I would say the next one would be Star Wars Episode 1, Attack of the Phantom Menace. Now, I own the original Part 1 video game. Over time, that video game did not age well. It did not age well at all. It is a game that I feel like could definitely use a remaster and a reboot of things. I mean, really just a full-fledged reboot, remaster from scratch. The graphics and the controls, especially the camera angles, it did not age well over the years. It did not age well. I'd say the next one would be Spider-Man 1. Now, this Spider-Man game was mainly based off a little bit of the 90s comics, but a lot of the 90s Spider-Man animated cartoon back then. And I have that first Spider-Man game put away in storage. I know there's a part 2 to that. I don't remember it so well, but I know I played it. But I think the first one definitely needs to get a reboot, a remake, and a remaster for today's console. And I think a lot of the younger people would definitely enjoy that game a lot. I think they would, because if you enjoyed, with the Spider-Man that came out last year and the Miles Morales. Now, I haven't played those two. I mainly like to stay to play a lot of the classic Spider-Man games from the Sega and PS1, because that's the Spider-Man that I grew up playing with and playing as, as a kid. Like, I'm 31 years old, so, I prefer the classics, really anything new at that. And I would say the last game for the PS1 that needs to come back and definitely needs a re-release as well is the X-Men Children of the Atom. Yes, X-Men Children of the Atom. That is a game that does need a re-release. X-Men Children of the Atom was such a good arcade fighting game. The soundtrack to it is phenomenal. And I wish they would re-release that, because I would really love to replay that game. And I think the younger generation today would deeply enjoy that game. I believe so. Me, I used to own it, and it ended up getting destroyed in a house flood down in the basement with sewer sludge. Yeah, I was pretty upset. Now, a lot of people thought, back then, that game probably was not going to be worth anything. But if you try to buy it today, that game is worth between $5,000, $10,000. $5,000 to $10,000. $5,000 without the case, $10,000 factory sealed with the case and everything in mint condition. Now, some, second-hand, third-hand game stores will sell the game for at least $210. That's how valuable that game is. And I used to have the game for free because it was given to me by a friend of mine who ended up passing away quite some time ago due to a heart attack. Now we move on to the PS2 era. Now, I want to start it off with seeing at least a remaster and definitely control and camera, better camera controls and control, updates with 50 Cent Bulletproof But I understand, 50 Cent's not trying to relive his days like that. G-Unit has all pretty much fallen apart and moved on. But I think it would have been nice for 50 to, really update that game with the graphics and controls. From my understanding, the company with the develop with that is no longer around. Just like the Spider-Man game I talked about, they're no longer around. I don't even think the people that even made the X-Men game are no longer around either. So, from right there, from what I just said, those games are up for grabs right now. What I mean up for grabs, they're floating around, per se, waiting for a game developer company to come in and, own and buy the rights to them and everything. I would say next game. No, I don't know if this company's still around, but I know Warner Brothers and DC pretty much has their own game developers these days. But I would like a reboot, a remaster, a remake of Batman: A Vengeance. Yes, of Batman: A Vengeance. I really think a lot of people, would definitely want that, because the gaming for Batman was down for so long until the Arkham series came out. And I have Batman: A Vengeance, and it's really fun. But now, with today's technology, there's so much that they can do to where we can play as different characters, expand upon Gotham City in Batman: A Vengeance. If they were to remaster it, reboot it, and re-release and everything, I really feel like we could get that. I would say next game, Catwoman. Catwoman, the video game, yes. I enjoyed Halle Berry's Catwoman. I love the movie. I know a lot of people didn't, but I enjoyed it. The video game was okay, but I really feel like now, with such a high love for Catwoman, with the people, especially that played the character over the years, they could go back and definitely redo that game. Or we could get, if they wanted to, we could definitely get 2 different video games of Catwoman these days. We could get the cinematic, which is movie, Catwoman game, remake, remaster, rebooted. Make it a bit open world, like with the Arkham series. Another one, we could get another Catwoman based off the animated universe, and then a standalone Catwoman game for the Arkham games as well. So there's a lot just right there with that idea alone that would work. I would say the next group of video games for this one. Now I'm going to count these 2 together. Vice City and San Andreas. Vice City and San Andreas, I feel like over the years, yes, they are classics. Do not get me wrong. I love San Andreas. I love Vice City. But Vice City and San Andreas now, I feel like it's definitely time for Rockstar to say, okay, let's take this game, redo it, reboot it, remaster it, remake it, and re-release it for the next generation consoles. The only thing that they did for that, which is complete laziness, is just took the PS2 versions and put them on the PlayStation Play Store. It's not the same thing. If you're going to do that, give the people, what they want. Now, with me talking about this, yes, I'm pretty sure this is all what we want, but what we want is not what we're going to get. And usually what we end up getting is not what we want. So I could definitely see, again, a full-fledged remaster reboot, especially with Vice City, because so much of Vice City just became so competitive. Like, you're mainly running around expanding turfs and shit rather than storyline. I feel like a lot of that could be cut out of the game and just play, I guess, similar with GTA 5 in that regard. San Andreas is good, but it does need pretty much a reboot to a sense. Definitely a remaster as well. I think a lot of people would enjoy that. And again, there's so much that they could do with those two games if they do that. Especially, again, with today's technology and with how bigger and the consoles are, and a lot more of how the console engine goes and everything. Like, imagine those maps being expanded upon and so much more that we could do. So much more, The next one, I don't know if this company's around anymore, but they are the developers and creator of the video game called Gun. I enjoyed Gun, but there's a part in that game that they could honestly to God take out. They could just take out. And that's what that damn horse race or horse training, whatever it is, when you wake up in the game. Like, your horse stamina and speed runs out so quick before you can even do anything, and it's ridiculous. That game definitely needs a remake and a remaster at that. When it first came out, it was good, and I always wanted to try it, but I never got to. Eventually, I ended up owning it last year, and I did end up playing it. So, I did enjoy Gun, but it does need to be fully redone, remastered, rewritten, and re-released for today's consoles. Now, to go in a bit further, the next one, Red Dead Revolver. Yes, Red Dead Revolver. I would like to see a full-fledged, remaster, remake with Red Dead Revolver, and have it tie in to the Red Dead Redemption universe. And Red Dead Revolver can definitely become an open world game, because the time that game takes place in, if you were to use your own headcanon, that game takes place way before Red Dead Redemption 2, and maybe even a little bit before the Dutch Vanderlyn gang rising in power. Because in Red Dead Redemption 1, Red Dead Redemption 2, you do hear stories about Red Hollow, and there are similar areas in both of those games that pay homage, if not Easter eggs, to Red Dead Revolver, and telling us, Red Hollow's definitely in this universe. But if they really wanted to make it, saying quote unquote canon, as it were, they could definitely expand upon that. and re-release it as such. The next one would be the Godfather series. I never knew there was a part 2. I never knew it. I don't think a lot of people really knew. I did play the first one on PS2, but a lot of that game back then was good for its time, but over the years it didn't age well. That's why I say, we need a full-on reboot and definitely reworked, rewritten, and remastered video game with The Godfather. Now, I know they remastered and rebooted Mafia 2 and Mafia 1. Now, I played original Mafia 1 and 2. I would like to play the remasters to those, the remakes of them. I do know online the trilogy for those off Amazon is a little expensive. But they're even more, I guess they're probably about as expensive as well on the Play Store. But, when I get extra money, I'm probably going to have to download those games and definitely play them. So I am curious. I do want to play the remasters, for the first 2 games. Because I really enjoyed the third Mafia game. I really did enjoy it. I would say next would be the first 3 Spider-Man games that were based off the first 3 movies back then that came out, definitely for the PS2. I have 1 and I have 3. I enjoy them. I never played 2, and to be honest, I never knew they actually came out with 2. I like part 2, but do I think part 2 was deserving of a video game? No, not really. But if you were to tell me which ones that I would really rather see with the remaster reboot, it would be the first Spider-Man movie game and the third Spider-Man movie game. Not so much with part 2. Like, I'm good on part 2. To me, it doesn't need it, in my own personal opinion. I just don't see it. I know a lot of people did enjoy it from what I heard, but it's I don't know. I can't really see that being a good video game. The movie was okay. It wasn't the best like the first one and the third one, but it was okay. Now, what I would like to see going on next, right? I would like to see a Star Wars Episode 2 video game. Now, there's a lot, and I mean there's a lot, that they can really do with that game, because the title, the added-on title is called Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. The original concept, the original idea, and I was I want to say I was still young, I was still in school. I think I was just getting out of elementary school, going into middle school, and the concept idea, I remember the concept art being shown on X Games. There used to be a TV channel just for video gaming before there was YouTube. Like, nothing but talking about video games, reviewing them, people playing them. It sucks that, Exchange didn't last so long, but they really paved the way for gamers and YouTube and people to game on YouTube. But I remember concept art talking about, Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones, and the idea for the video game was going to be just that. Like, there were going to be evil clones of certain characters from the movie that you would go up against. Like, for example, there would be an evil clone Anakin, and good Anakin would have to fight against it. There would be an evil clone Obi-Wan Kenobi, to where Kenobi would have to fight against him. An evil clone of Mace Windu. Mace Windu would have to fight, good Mace Windu would have to fight against him. And around this time, they were about to make, I can't forget his name. And I know it's the character that everybody hates, and I actually enjoy the character too. Jar Jar Binks, that's it. Jar Jar Binks, and again, the original concept for episode 2, and even with the video game, he would have force powers, and this is where we would be introduced to the concept idea and a hint that Jar Jar Binks was a Sith, because we were supposed to fight against evil Jar Jar Binks as Jar Jar Binks, the Force user, but who's not a Jedi. And there, within that game, along with the original concept idea, with the script, the Jar Jar that we knew, and even supposed to be revealed in episode 3, that yes, he was a Sith Lord as well. I think that really would have been great for the character. But yes, we definitely would have got that, and we would have had to fight against 2 different Count Dooku's. There would have been evil clone Count Dooku, and then Sith Count Dooku as well. So I do remember seeing the concept art of that back then, and that idea unfortunately was scrapped, and that was picked up again for a future game that was supposed to happen after the Old Republic 1 and 2. It was really supposed to focus upon that concept, that idea that I talked about, and they redid some concept art, and what it was a what if Star Wars game. What if the Jedi became evil and so rogue that it scared the dark side of the Force and the Sith had to go and defeat the evil Jedi, and the Sith over time during the process of the game would become more towards the light side and actually become good and bring balance to the Force. Like, that concept right there sounded so good, and I never knew about that till a couple of months ago, watching a Star Wars Theory, I think it was, who done a video on that idea, or on that video, and showed the art for that was supposed to be. I would say next would even be for episode 3. Yes, episode 3 is one of the best, not just the best Star Wars movies, but had one of the best games. And they could really, bring that back, full on remaster and stuff as well, and release it for the next gen consoles. I would love to see that. I think a lot of people would. I would say going next would be The Force Unleashed 1. The Force Unleashed 1 was good, but there was something that was amiss in there. I felt like they could have added a versus battle, because all the characters that we get to unlock to play as costume changes, and a lot of the people that we went up against, they could have added a versus battle. We could have got one of the best versus battle games for that. And I feel like if they were to bring that back, like I've been talking about in this video, and add that versus battle concept to the game, that would be a major hit amongst players. It would be a major hit amongst players. It really would. It would be a major hit amongst players. I would say the next game, which would be the last game, maybe not the last game. I'd say the next game, I think, just needs a full-on rewritten, rebooted, remastered, and have it fully based off the show. Is Transformers Armada. Now, I never played the Transformers Armada game. It was just so expensive for me to get. I never got to play it. I saw gameplay of it though, and it doesn't make sense for it to take place before after the dinosaurs' extinction and before humans. Like, it doesn't make any sense for that, because they're dressed as vehicles that just were not around. That's why it needs to be based off the show, and we get to play as the kids in certain missions, and then as certain Transformers during certain missions, but have it be a good balance of that. Don't have it all over the place. Have it be a good balance of that. A really good balance. Like, to me, one of my favorite two Transformers of all time, my favorite two Transformers, right, is Starscream and Hotshot, because they are just one of the most well-developed characters, man, in Transformers. I understand Hotshot was not around that long, but he's just a really good character. I enjoy him, especially Starscream. Like, Starscream, you know, his character history throughout so many series of Transformers is just really well done, in my opinion. And there would have to be two parts of Transformers Armada. There would be the one based off the first half of the show, and then the second half would be the Unicron battles. I feel like that would definitely be something, and I feel like we do need to get that, especially really fighting the battle for the mini-cons and have it actually really count and matter, you know? I would like to see that. I would say now the last game for this one I would like to see is the Yu Yu Hakusho Dark Tournament. That needs a full-on remaster, and it needs to have the same concept controls like Dragon Ball Rage and Blast 2. Dragon Ball Rage and Blast 2. And these have those same idea of controls. Because there's a reason why Rage and Blast 2 worked, and I feel like the Dark Tournament can take from that and learn from it and be a great game. Next, for the 360. Oh man, that's for the 360. I can tell you this: there's a lot of games that did not age well for the 360. If that's what you're wondering, there's a lot of games that didn't age well for it. But if I were to pick and choose, man, because there's not that many of them out there that I liked. Yeah, I know. Oh man, you know what? This ain't easy, but it would be some of the ones that I do own, and it's not a lot of them. It's not a lot. First game. Okay, first game that I would like to see be rebooted, remastered. Red Dead Redemption 1. Because when Red Dead Redemption 2 came out, it really made Red Dead Redemption 1 retcon itself. There is so much more to the map now that if I'm doing the math correctly in my head, in the prologue of part 2, it's been 8 years. since the passing of Arthur Morgan. Part 1, John Marston's been gone for his family for 4 years because he got recruited and he had to help the Pinkertons, pretty much. Plus, it's been, 4 years after the defeat of Micah and definitely the disappearance of Dutch. So that would make it in a total of, 9, 10, 11. That would make it at least 12 years later. 12 years later in total. So, with it being 12 years later, there's a lot of changes over that period of time that can happen to city, places, the wildlife, the woods, that I would love to see, especially what they look like 12 years later, and the concept of the game of Red Dead Redemption 1. Yes, not just getting the areas that we got. And I can say this, when I did play part 1, right? After I played part 2, I went back and played part 1. It feels so empty in that map, in the tumbleweed area of Armadillo, of New Austin, I think. It feels really empty. The reason why I say it feels empty is because in part 2, it's chaotic, it feels lively, you know what I'm saying? But part 1 feels really empty because the characters that we grew to love within these 3 years of RDR2 being out, they're no longer around. So when we go to Red Dead Redemption 1, especially on Sadie Adler's ranch town, right, sitting around the fire, it's not that same feeling because it feels so empty and absent. It feels not haunted, but it feels so empty and absent, in that sense, if you were. I would say the next game, again, there's not that many of them, but I think it would be Saints Row 3. Saints Row 3 at the time when it came out, I did enjoy it, I loved it, but it needs so much more work done to it now because it didn't age well, and that really sucked that it didn't age well at all. It just did not age well. I think that would really be about it though for my picks with 360, except for one more, which would be Grand Theft Auto Escape from Liberty City. I think that one would need it because I did enjoy that one, and I need to go back a little bit. I think for one of the PS2 games I forgot about was Scarface. Scarface did not age well. There's so much of that game that's way too competitive, like Vice City, that could be trimmed down, cut out in total and full, to where it just needs fully rebooted altogether, remastered, and the map really redone because it just didn't make much sense for the map. We need to be able to explore more areas and just take the concept of how Mafia 3 expanded on territory turfs for Scarface. If they were to do that and bring it up to date, it would be a better game, in my opinion, because when it first came out, we enjoyed it. When it first came out, the graphics were something, but over time that game didn't age well, and I know the company that developed that game is no longer around. But yeah, those are the games that I would like to see get a remake, a remaster, and a reboot. I know it's something that's never going to happen, just like just like with the first 4 Batman movie games, right? Consider these runner-ups or bonus, or like a bonus, right? So, Batman 1989 video game I do have. I got the American version with the black gray suit, and I got the digital version of the China Japan version with him with the purple and blue suit. The game definitely needs to hold 10 yards. Make it a bit open city-esque. Not too much, but make it a bit open world city-esque to expand upon it. I think that would be great. The same thing with Batman Returns. I do have that. That came out for the Sega as well. They can make that, again, a little bit open city-esque as well. Give that the full 10 yards, really bring those first 2 so much up to date within the updated gen consoles. I think a lot of people love that. I would love that. The same thing with Batman Forever. Now, Batman Forever really can't be open like that because it takes place in different locations like in the movie. But it can definitely be expanded upon for a bit. Not so much where it takes it away, but just enough where it feels good. Give it the whole 10 yards. I think that would be awesome. And the same thing, because I do have the Batman Forever game as well, the original for the Sega. And the last one, the Batman and Robin video game based off the 1997 movie. That one came out for the PS1. That one definitely needs a full-fledged altogether, man, because it didn't age good. The controls, just so much of it's just really clunky. And it has so much of a heavy potential to be a really good open world, open city-esque game for it too. Anybody who played the original one knows what I'm talking about. So those 4 games I would like to see for that, but I don't think it would ever happen. But with that being said, I'm out. Peace. I know it gets annoying, but I just thought about it too, man. Oh God. So check this out, right? This is a long video. I'm sorry for that, but I do like a little bit of longer videos that I usually watch or do. This is on my main phone. My other phone that I record on's in here. And I thought about it. Let's go back to the PS2. A game that really needs badly redone was Batman Begins. Batman Begins, for me, was a shitty ass game. I thought it was the horriblest game ever for a Batman game. The movies were great. The game was just shit. That's why, it really needs that full-fledged, full-on reboot. It really does. And it sucks that, we never even gotten, and I feel like we could now. I feel like we could get a game for, the other 2 Batman movies as well, with The Dark Knight and then The Dark Knight Rises. I think the video games for those movies would be awesome, but I don't think it's never going to happen. And then I'm going to name 2 video games that I would love to see be made. I don't think it's ever going to happen. Now, the first one you guys are going to laugh at, but I think it would be a really cool concept, man. Have a Golden Girls video game. But I know, only one actor is still left from that whole series, and that's Betty White. There's a reason why you can't find those Golden Girl figures around much anymore. That came out about 2 years ago. If you try to find at least one, it's really high price up there. A lot of you younger folks, You probably don't know who the Golden Girls are, but look it up on those streaming services that you guys got. Type in Golden Girls. You guys would love the series. Ask your parents about the Golden Girls. They used to watch it. Ask your grandparents about the Golden Girls. They'll tell you. Really great show. I would say the next game I want to see, based off a show, Remastered. Remastered was such a good show, but it just didn't last long for whatever concept reason. But I think Remastered would make a very good game, done right. But yeah, sorry about that, but I'm out.